And a very good Thursday morning to you. I'm Josh Elliott, and yes, we are starting our day a bit early here at CBSN because it is not so early in the UK. And not only is it not early, it is a rather special and august day as well. For the woman you see there, Queen Elizabeth, turns 90 today. We actually want to take you to Windsor Castle, as you can see, where Her Majesty is celebrating. Britain's longest reigning monarch is marking her birthday by taking a walk about Windsor with her husband, Prince Philip, of course, the Duke of Edinburgh. Here with me as we watch today the celebration, Secretary General Baroness Patricia Scotland and CBSN's royal family contributor, Victoria Arbiter. Also with us today as well, our own Mark Phillips, alongside royal watcher Roy Anika, both of whom are outside Windsor Castle and will be joining us in just a bit. But I want to bring in our experts here. This is a day not unlike really, well, a day dawning a little prettier than the Jubilee of 2012, but this is a big day that extends far beyond a simple birthday celebration, even for a monarch.
It absolutely is. The Queen is not only the Queen of the United Kingdom, she's also the Queen of the whole Commonwealth, which is 53 countries. And it's extraordinary that for all her reign, she has dedicated herself to all those people. And now it represents about 2.2 billion people. So it's 1/3 of the world's population. And they'll be looking in those 53 countries and celebrating with her, because she has been loyal and caring. When she was 21, she dedicated her whole life to the Commonwealth. And she's done that, and it's been quite remarkable.
And this dedication of service, Victoria, has not just marked her reign, but has endeared her now to generations. And we were just talking before we went on, this, for all intents and purposes, for the vast majority of the Commonwealth proper, this is the only monarch they've ever known.
That's absolutely right. I mean, there are vast numbers of people around the world that don't remember any other monarch, and I truly think that they believe she's just going to live forever because they can't imagine the Queen as not the head of state. But they hold her in a deep affection. We were talking before about how Scottish nationalists, when they looked to the referendum in 2014, they said, well, we want to be independent, but let's keep the Queen.
To keep the Queen.
Republicans have declared her to be untouchable. So I'm sure there's a lot of grumpy folk today that are having to recognise this day. But really what it is for the Queen, for the country, for the Commonwealth, it's an opportunity to say thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your duty. And so the fact that she's able to get out and meet the people of Windsor and to receive flowers and receive those birthday wishes, for someone who really doesn't like a fuss, then it becomes a very special day.
And as somebody who understands, we have our Commonwealth neighbors to the north, but as a very prominent nation that is not a part of the Commonwealth, just this idea, this enduring love affair that this country has with the monarch of the country who once, ruled us with an iron fist, if you will, especially against the backdrop, frankly, of the political cycle we're seeing here in the United States. What do you make of the resonance here of what we're seeing right now?
Well, I think really Americans look to the royal family and just see a living history, because that's what it is. The Queen is the 40th monarch. She's the 6th Queen since William the Conqueror took the crown over 1,000 years ago.
That's our first William the Conqueror reference of the day.
Yeah, that's the first one. I got the first one in. But really, when you start looking at that, and then we had this photograph released for the Royal Mail stamps a couple of days ago where you saw the Queen is number 40, Charles is 41, William 42, George is 43. George stands to be the first monarch of the 22nd century. So really we see history into the future. We look at the legacy of the Queen, and she'll be leaving the single greatest blueprint of any other monarch.
And here we are, Baroness, seeing the Queen working a rope line, as you mentioned. She is a great unifier, and that's another theme that Americans, certainly in the electorate right now, can certainly appreciate. It's a word we're hearing more and more. What sort of, not just reception is she receiving here in Windsor, but what is it? What is the experience right now of these people who are able to give her these flowers, who are able to shake her hand and wish her a happy birthday?
Well, I think they're absolutely thrilled, and the people who will be really looking at her with awe are the fellow 90-year-olds who were there during the war, who were standing beside her, and they look at her and think, wow, there's no stick, she's walking around, she's being loved, she is absolutely expressing a lot of joy. And the thing that people find so remarkable is that she's so humble. You know, she's very unassuming. She's so interested in what people are saying, what they're thinking. And if you look at her face, she adores young people. She comes alive when the little ones are around. And she's so encouraging. She stands for stability, she stands for continuity, but faithfulness. You know, she's always there. She is remarkable in terms of what she gives to leaders. Because if you can imagine, she was there with Trudeau's father. And now she's there with the son. So she can tell him the things that, you know, his dad did or didn't do, and maybe you want to. And she's so warm. She's warm, she's receptive, she's kind. And that's what people find so remarkable. And she's very steady. You know, she doesn't flap. I remember there was one occasion when someone did something which was remarkably difficult, and she just raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh yes, I think your father did that too." And you just remembered what happened to the father, and you went, "Oh dear." So she's subtle and she's remarkable.
In looking at really, or the last generation of her life, she in 1997 referred to the honest horriblest, but it was a very. It was a quick glimpse, perhaps, into her life as a person. I wonder, you mentioned, with a life dedicated to service and somebody who certainly understands her singular bearing. A 90th birthday is a very personal thing. It's also just, it's a thing that, let's be honest, we all, knock wood, maybe we all get there someday. But, you know, how will this day, perhaps, behind the most closed of doors, how will it be celebrated by her? How is she feeling right now, just as a 90-year-old?
Well, I hope what she's feeling is that when she said at 21 that she would dedicate her life to the Commonwealth, be it short or long, and she will feel, I hope, huge satisfaction that that's exactly what she's done. And what she's getting back now is love and appreciation, not for her as the monarch alone, but for her as the Queen who's done that. Yeah. You know, she's walked the talk. She hasn't just said she'd do it, she's done it, and she's done it every single day of her life. And just look at Prince Philip right now. He's right beside her. And that's a remarkable relationship you're seeing there, with two people dedicating themselves, because the Queen dedicated herself to her people, and the Duke of Edinburgh has dedicated himself to her.
With Commonwealth friends, I know just one of my favorite colloquialisms that I have borrowed from my British and Australian friends is, instead of calling somebody a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you call them a partner. And it is a lovely gender non-specific idea that speaks to the partnership, just for both of you, the partnership of Prince Philip and the Queen. What has it meant?
I think it's meant stability, stability, security, the fact that the two of them have walked through this more than 60-year period, through good times and through bad, because remember, at the time when she first dedicated herself to the Commonwealth, when she was 21, she had come through a war, there'd been a great upheaval in the United Kingdom, and she had seen the Commonwealth come to the United Kingdom's rescue, all these small countries rallying to make sure that justice and peace really was a reality. So what she did when she dedicated herself is she was remembering that commitment, and creating the Commonwealth has been quite extraordinary. They started as 8 countries, they're now 53. And if you want to ask who has been instrumental in keeping those 2.2 billion people together, I think it's been the head, and she's been it.
She's the birthday girl today, 90 years young. Again, as the festivities continue, I suppose when you're the Queen, every day in public can feel like a day of festivities. We're going to listen in just a moment, but it is the idea, perhaps as the pragmatism of a monarchy has receded a bit, to really both of your points now, the rise of the Commonwealth and the pragmatic application of it. Victoria, I know, right now, in this day and age, what and may she live forever. But what in the architecture of this Commonwealth, what has she laid out, and what might she leave behind one day, decades from now?
Decades from now. Well, arguably, the success of the Commonwealth has been, I would say, in her mind, her greatest achievement. Yeah. The empire was dwindling when she came to the throne, and she has overseen this very successful transition. And Commonwealth leaders have all talked about the fact that they may squabble between themselves, but she provides this wonderful focus for unity, and they all hold her in deep affection. She's very sensible, she's very pragmatic, she's very down to earth, and as we were saying, she doesn't get in a flap. No. So she's able to just very diplomatically keep the peace within the group. And she's made it a mission to go to all of these countries. In 1961, Ghana had just received its independence 4 years earlier. There was a spate of bombing, and the Queen was due to visit, and all the government ministers were saying, well, ma'am, you really shouldn't go, it's not safe. And she said, well, no nonsense, I'm not cancelling this, of course I'm going to go. So the Commonwealth Secretary just went out to make sure that there was a good route they could navigate where she'd be fine, and the Queen, in her pragmatism, went out there. It was an immensely successful tour. So I think the fact that she just keeps showing up to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, she was in Malta with Prince Philip, Charles and Camilla just last year, she has been so dedicated to it, and in return there's a deep-rooted affection for her. And she has served it all of her life, and it's interesting too that it is a 53-member group, and yet 16 have decided to keep the Queen as head of state, and I think that speaks volumes as well in this day and age.
She also more recently had a visit to Ireland. That as well. I'm not to compare the two trips, the Ghana and the Ireland trip, but it resonated beyond the mere trip itself.
Absolutely, because this was the monarch returning to an area which had been torn with strife by the very desire to be independent from the United Kingdom. And it was remarkable because they not only welcomed her, and there must have been a bit of tension as to how it would go, would they be really frosty? They embraced her, and that celebration and the way in which she just gently and with all that sagacity and wisdom migrated the way through, created a pathway so both sides could think, you know what, this is okay, we can do this. And the warmth that she generated, not just for herself, but for the United Kingdom as a result of the graciousness with which she embraced Ireland. It was quite a remarkable thing to see, and she's a consummate diplomat. But what's remarkable about her is she cares about healing between different people. And right at the beginning of her time in 1947, she talked about the independent nature of the Commonwealth, but also about the parity of treatment that needed to be given to all races. And if you can imagine, in 1947,
incredibly
that
forward
was
thinking.
An incredible thing to say.
With Ireland as well, I think what was so interesting to see was you saw the diplomacy in action because she wore emerald green when she arrived. Yep. She spoke a little Gaelic. She bowed before the national memorial to those who had lost their lives in the fight for independence. It's these tiny little things that speak volumes for the country that is being visited.
And no one thought she would do that.
No.
They were going, wow, did she really? This is amazing.
And the ability to understand, I guess, as all great diplomats do, at the tender age of 85, that these are the things. I've been struck by the modern flexibility as well of this monarchy, as again, they've been rendered footnotes and punchlines in the modern world. There is an evolution of the monarchy itself to remain relevant.
Well, she's a stickler for tradition and protocol. If something bad happens, you turn to tradition and protocol because that's going to get you through it. But at the same time, she's recognised that in order to remain relevant, they have to adapt and evolve. So, for example, when Prince George was born, yes, the easel was placed in the forecourt at Buckingham Palace, as had been done for generations of royal babies, but the news went out via Twitter as well.
Yes, it did.
So she recognises this need to keep changing, to keep adapting. But I think the quality that people people forget she has in spades is just sheer tenacity, just her approach to everything. For example, during the coronation, Winston Churchill was morally opposed to televising it. That would be outrageous. But at the age of 26, and she was in this man's world, a world dominated by men in industry and politics, it was her wisdom that said, no, I want the people to be a part of this. And there have been so many examples along the way of where she's very subtly put her foot down, but that's why William recently referred to her as the boss, and Harry says, you know when she's cross.
The grandsons in particular have always seemed to know exactly who runs the show,
Yes, exactly.
if you will. Again, as she now makes her way up a red carpet, we do, well, you mentioned George. If it was possible perhaps for Queen Elizabeth to become even more adorable, we do want to show not just this photo. There she is with the heirs, as you mentioned. At some point, one of the men in this photo do figure to take over. However, maybe she goes to 150, 160, and we all just keep watching history unfold. But I want to show, if we can, the Queen with the little ones, because there is Mia Tyndall. And if you can, well, I wish I could step to a screen and circle the most adorable child perhaps in God's creation. The handbag-toting wonder, 17th in the line to the throne, but maybe first in our hearts now. I have a feeling she's picking up some global fans. I mean, this is a wonderful look by Annie Leibovitz.
This is a great picture too, because yes, Mia's got the Queen's handbag, but Charlotte, who's in the Queen's lap, is holding a plastic pony. So these are Windsor girls through and through. There's no question, but it's a beautiful painting, and I really think it looks like an old oil painting, the way it was taken. But to have the Queen surrounded by her 5 great-grandchildren, her 2 youngest grandchildren, it's again talking about, it's really illustrating the continuity of the royal family, and to have the oldest generation with the very youngest generations, I think it's really an iconic picture that will live on for centuries.
I can see the tabloids now here in the States, you know, royals, they're just like us. Does the Queen chase after the little ones? What do we know of her interactions with the tykes?
I think we know that she loves them extraordinarily. And also, if you see the photographs and the film sometimes with her looking after her horses, she seems to love children and horses and dogs more than almost anything else. But she's pretty cool on people who are beyond the age of 18 as well.
I suppose with the children, the dogs and the horses, they regard her slightly differently to all the people that are bowing and scraping the rest of the time. And William shared a great story in an interview just this week. He said that he and Peter Phillips, his cousin, were at Balmoral on the quad bikes, and they managed to back Zara into a corner, and a lamppost fell down and almost hit her on the head. And he said the Queen came running out in her kilt and absolutely read him the riot act. and he sort of understood at that moment that it's not a good idea to kill your cousins. So the very visual of the Queen dashing out across the lawn at Balmoral is fantastic.
Our kingdom for that cell phone video, I can only say. And you know, it also bears mentioning, especially in the historical context, and she is living history, that this, but for twists of very tragic fate, this is a woman who was never going to be queen. It seems that even in the midst of that tragedy and its aftermath, fate chose wisely.
Well, what's so remarkable is if you look at how she served during the war, she dedicated herself to doing that which all the other young women were doing, driving the trucks and stripping engines. I mean, she's a real doer. And she's never complained. She didn't say, well, look, I'm only a 26-year-old woman, I've got 2 kids, I'm having a really wonderful time in Malta, I don't want to be queen. You know, she just stepped up to the plate. And as you said earlier, what's quite extraordinary is people forget that when she became queen at 26, a young and rather beautiful woman, people didn't take women that seriously. And for all those years, she was just a remarkable female leader that nobody noticed. And it was really interesting, a couple of years ago, as if someone woke up and went, oh yes, she's a woman. Yeah, she's a woman.
She became a sort of unlikely feminist role model.
I was going to, what sort of modern feminist role model is she?
Well, I don't think anyone would have really thought that about her, but the fact that she's been able to work, raise a successful family, which is what women the world over are striving to do, but also just these little subtle ways. I love this story. In 1998, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia was visiting Balmoral, and he was asked if he'd like a tour of the estate. Now, of course, in Saudi Arabia, women are not yet allowed to drive. So he said, yes, well, that would be very nice. So they brought up the Land Rovers. He got into the passenger seat and waited a couple of minutes. And then this 5'4" whirlwind got into the driver's seat, and it was the Queen. As you mentioned, she was a driver during World War II, so she's a speed demon. Foot down on the pedal, off she went.
A need for speed.
And he was desperately trying to get her to slow down or stop talking or don't talk and drive at the same time, because, of course, he'd never been driven by a woman. But it would have been a very subtle way of her showing him that it's quite all right for a woman to be driving.
The royals, they're just like us. We just saw some pictures of the coronation. Lo, these many years ago, the death of her father, and happening as suddenly as it did, and remotely, she was not able to be at her bedside, say goodbye. What impact did that have on her?
Dramatic impact. She was very close to her father. He called her his pride, and Margaret, her sister, was his joy. And what was quite lovely about her early childhood was because he didn't have the pressures of impending kingship on his shoulders, his brother was going to be king, he was able to spend a lot of time with his daughters. They had a very close, loving relationship. He and his wife did bath time and bedtime. It wasn't this idea of the iron-fisted nanny ruling the nursery. So when she went away to represent him on this tour, he was regarded well enough for her to leave on this tour. So it was a terrible shock to then receive the news that he had passed away. She's actually the only monarch that we don't know the exact time she became queen, because he passed away in his sleep during the night. But I think to come home suddenly to a nation in mourning, having been waved off 6 days earlier by her father, then having to move into Buckingham Palace, having these two young children, still relatively newlywed, would have been very difficult. But as you said, her mother's motto, never complain, never explain, really kicked in, and she's just stepped up to the job. She's made her father proud. And in 1929, her mother wrote a letter that said, I can't understand why the people should love her so much. I hope she'll be worthy of it. And here we are this many years later. I think she's been very worthy indeed.
It's fair to say. You're somebody who's known her since the 1980s. What would we be surprised to find out?
That she's got such a remarkable sense of humour, that she's so witty and ironic, and she's so quick. She does not miss a thing. And I think that's what catches people by surprise, because as one gets older, there's a tendency to think, well, you know, not quite as sharp as you might have been, but oh, no way. No, I think that's what people are surprised by, this dry, witty sense of humour. And she really knows how to just put a pin in those who have inflated egos.
I am not asking you this question because I feel the need to validate your credentials, Madam Secretary General. But that phone call came out of nowhere, and it changed your life. What can you tell us about it?
You mean the phone call when I was asked to lunch with her, or the phone call?
Yes.
Well, I was sitting.
I mean, do you think this is you must think that this is a prank. Somebody's having a laugh.
No, this is exactly what happened. I was sitting working away, and at the time I'm a barrister, and my chambers tended to think that I was a bit naive. So a phone call came from the Lord Chamberlain saying, the Lord Chamberlain is on the telephone. And I went, yeah, right. You know, I'm not going to fall for that one.
Oh, and by the way, here you are.
And it really was the Lord Chamberlain. And when I picked up the phone, I went, hello, I'm the Lord Chamberlain. He said, I'm the Lord Chamberlain. I said, really? And then he said, no, I am the Lord Chamberlain. And the Queen would like to know whether if she invited you to lunch, whether you'd be minded to accept. So I think I might. But it was such a shock. I mean, why would she be phoning up a barrister, an unknown barrister as far as I was concerned, doing work on family law, on children, on human rights issues? I would have thought I'd be the last person to come to her attention. But what's really interesting is she somehow has her finger on the pulse. And she has these opportunities which aren't lauded, which just enables her to bring people in, to talk to them, so that she has an idea of what's happening on the ground. Not just what are people saying, what are they feeling? What are the problems? I did a lot of work on domestic violence, which affects 1 in 3 women across the world. It's the greatest cause of morbidity in women and girls. An opportunity for her to understand things that are affecting people's lives. And she's so interested. She's interested in the poor, she's interested in the young. I mean, I'm one of the trustees for the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Trust. We are looking at 2 issues. One is how we bring it to an end, the 5 forms of curable blindness, and the other is young people. She loves young people. And she was able to take an interest in things, knowing if she did, other people would follow. And what was really so incredibly touching is the amount she cares and the interests that she had. And she just doesn't just care, she then follows through. So I was totally taken aback that anyone would invite me to lunch. And I thought it was going to be this huge lunch with 97,000 people. There were 6 of us invited to lunch with the Queen and Prince Philip. And
do you remember every moment of it? Do you remember every bite of it?
I remember virtually every minute. It was initially terrifying.
What was served? I have to know.
Oh, well, no, I'm not telling you that. That's a secret.
You have your secret.
I have my secret.
I can appreciate that. As again, we see the birthday girl now cutting her cake. What do we think? What do we think the flavor? Do we have a guess? What's underneath those beautiful lavender hues?
Almost doesn't matter because it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
That's very impressive.
We do now have Roy Nika, who's on scene there. Roy, I do want to bring you in. Can you give us a sense of a day that has dawned beautifully there in the UK and a sense of the crowds that have gathered to receive their Queen?
They don't know. They never tell you.
She can hear us.
And she can't hear us.
It's lovely where she
Live
is. So she's
television.
in the quadrangle of Windsor Castle. I have to say they've spruced up that lawn. It looks pretty spectacular. But Windsor is the Queen's one of her favourite official residences, and she spends every weekend there. But she spends the whole of April there. She's there.
Well, you're from there too. I mean, so what to make of this? What to make of this day? Is this a lovely spring day that you?
This is lovely. I'll tell you one of my favourite memories growing up in Windsor, because really the royal family was always a backdrop to my life. It was always what are the royal family doing. Because my father was working for the Queen at the time. And what I remember so much is there's a big hill, Castle Hill, and on Saturdays the guards would come from the barracks to come do the changing of the guard. And you'd be down at the supermarket doing terribly boring errands, and you'd hear the first trumpets of the soldiers coming, and you'd see all the kids running up the hill to go and see the soldiers. And so there's lots of tradition in Windsor. The castle really is the focal point. You sing carols around the Queen Victoria's statue at Christmas. It's a lovely sort of throwback to the olden days.
To be a child in Windsor.
It was a very special place to grow up, and I think, as you rightfully pointed out, the whole town will have rolled out today.
I believe we have the rendition. Here it is. We do want to thank some recent legislation here in the States that allows us to carry the actual singing of the song Happy Birthday. You have no idea what went into that. I should talk to the barrister to my left exactly for an expert analysis there. So today, at the end of this day, does she look forward? Does she let herself consider her legacy on such an august occasion, or is it? Does she not see it as a labor?
She's always looking forward. I thought it was interesting when she became Britain's longest reigning monarch on September 9th of last year. She didn't want any fuss. Initially, she didn't even want to do an engagement, because to her that was seen as trumping her great-great-grandmother Queen Victoria's record, but also her reign came as a result of the loss of her father, so not something to be celebrated. She agreed for a little bit of fuss to be made for her birthday, and I think she's enjoying all of this, but probably tomorrow she's going to be quite glad for everything to go back to normal. She's very humble. But having said that, tonight there's a grand dinner at Windsor Castle being hosted by Charles and Camilla. It's an opportunity for the whole family to pay tribute because, Josh, as you said, this is a family occasion too. It's not just recognising the monarch. She's a grandmother and a great-grandmother. So tonight, Prince William has said they're going to keep her out very late. I think there'll be a lot of private celebrations to enjoy as well.
Oh boy, with some grandsons like William and Harry. I'm going to guess the Queen has seen some things and could tell some stories. As she makes her way now through the streets, we are going to bid adieu to the festivities over the pond. So we take our last looks at the birthday girl, the Queen, 90 years old today. It's a lovely thing. I think if there's one thing everybody can agree upon, can we keep the Queen? It's always, but can we keep the Queen? Victoria Arbiter, Baroness Scotland, can't thank you enough. It has been a lovely way to spend a morning here in the States. We really do appreciate it.
I'm going to
Thank
say
you.
happy birthday, Mom.
Yes,
don't you think?
that's
Happy
right.
birthday, Mom.
Happy birthday, Mom. And we want to thank all of you as well for watching as Queen Elizabeth celebrates a very special day. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we're back, Anne-Marie Green will get you caught up on all the other day's news.